Hey guys, welcome to my channel. I hope you're all doing very well. So the time has come once again. I'm going to be reacting to the 2025 Oscar nominees. Yes, the Academy recently announced the list of nominees for this year's awards, and as is tradition here on this channel, I'm going to be giving you guys my thoughts and feelings for who I think should win and who I think will win in these respective categories. And considering we have a lot to get into, it's time to crack on right away. But before we get into the good stuff, as per usual, if you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe, join the family. I love having you guys here, and make sure you turn on your notifications so that you can be told when I upload next. Now without further ado guys, let's get into my thoughts on this. Okay, so for the first category up, we've got Best Actress. And here the nominees are Cynthia Erivo for Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon for Emilia Perez, Mikey Madsen for Honora, Demi Moore for The Substance, and Fernanda Torres for I'm Still Here. When it comes to this list of projects, I have seen Wicked, Emilia Perez, Honora, and The Substance. So the only film that I haven't seen is I'm Still Here, and that one comes out in February here in the UK, so I'll definitely be checking it out, particularly because it seems like Fernanda Torres is the front runner in this category. It's tough because according to the Golden Globes, she was the best actress in a drama, but they also picked Demi Moore from The Substance as their best actress in a comedy or musical. So them kind of battling it out in the same category for the Oscars will be interesting. It's tough to see who is pulling ahead between the two. Demi Moore has that like classic Hollywood storyline of being an actress who's been working for a very long time, and now she's finally getting her due in this like perfect role that has a lot of social commentary, the kind of social commentary that Hollywood likes to pretend that it cares about, even though their actions say otherwise. But anywho, so it's all coming together in this perfect awards package for Demi Moore, and we've seen other actors in recent years like a Michelle Yeoh or even a Robert Downey Jr. kind of follow this same storyline and go home with the gold at the very end. So I wouldn't be surprised if Demi Moore manages to snatch this up, and that's even putting aside what my thoughts were on her performance in The Substance, because since my reaction to the Golden Globes, I have in fact watched The Substance. Even though I am a scaredy cat, I don't do horror and I certainly don't do gore, but I bit the bullet and I was like, listen, I need to see what everyone is fussing about. And honestly, I understand. Honestly, I understand now. I'm a convert. I understand why Demi Moore has been getting all of this hype. I thought her performance in The Substance was very, very strong. It was really, really good. I don't know about, her representing this big commentary on how women are seen in society, this desperate clinging on to a youth to be desirable and relevant. I don't know about her being the poster child for this discussion, considering the fact that just a few years back she was mocked and ridiculed online for having a supposed facelift. So like, I don't know I don't know what's going on there. There seems to be a disconnect, and that's what I mean when I say that Hollywood is pretending to care about this whole commentary, because in reality it perpetuates these ideals, and very purposefully so. But anywho, aside from the commentary of The Substance, I do think that Demi Moore did a tremendous job in this role. I mean, there were times in the film where it was tough to know where the sludge, the mound of human flesh ended and where Demi Moore began. But overall, the film itself is wild and crazy. She matched that energy whilst also being able to have those kind of grounded moments where you see the character is just really desperate. She's really lost her sense of self and her entire, ability to judge the scenario. She's in deep. She's in deep, and Demi Moore is able to convey those emotions so well, where even though you think like, this is just ridiculous, sis, just back out, just get out of this scenario, you kind of understand why she just keeps digging this hole deeper and deeper. Now, in terms of Fernanda Torres, as I said, I haven't seen I'm Still Here, so all I can say on her is that she seems to be the co-front runner alongside Demi Moore. But in terms of who I would want to see take the Oscar home, my sister Cynthia. My sister, like, oh, wouldn't that be the world's biggest gag if Cynthia Erivo took home the Oscar? I would fall off my chair. I would fall off my bed, my chair, wherever I'm watching the Oscars from. I would fall to the ground on my knees. I would not believe it. I know that it's just like so unlikely to happen, but maybe if the other two like split the vote somehow, and then we times the 4, carry the 3, multiplied by 17, and somehow we get to Cynthia Erivo ending up with an Oscar, ending up with an EGOT. That's right, she's got the rest, she's got the other letters. Ending up with an EGOT. That would be truly legendary status. Like, that would be so iconic. So that's who my personal pick would be, but it's looking to be the other 2 ladies who are likely going to take the gold home. Okay, so next up on the list, we have Best Actor, and here the nominees are Adrien Brody for The Brutalist, Timothée Chalamet for A Complete Unknown, Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing, Ralph Fiennes for Conclave, and Sebastian Stan for The Apprentice. First of all, I already said many a word about being a fan of Sebastian Stan. So yes, my ears did perk up when I saw that he was nominated for an Oscar. That is huge. Yet another Marvel actor getting nominated for an Oscar. We love to see it, honestly. And honestly, it would be such a gag if Sebastian ended up taking home the gold in this category. It is very unlikely. I don't think he's a front runner by any means, but it's incredible to see that he was ultimately nominated for his portrayal of Donald Trump, especially considering the wider political context of what's going on in America and the world. I think it's incredible. It's history in the making already, especially considering that he's literally an immigrant himself. Like, there's so many layers to this actually that it's kind of a big deal. I'm gagged. This is definitely his year, and shout out to Thunderbolts, because that's still my most anticipated project of the MCU of 2025. In terms of who I think is the actual frontrunner in this category, if you'd asked me a couple of weeks ago, I would have said Adrien Brody, but some information has come out. Some information has come out concerning his performance in The Brutalist. Apparently he portrays like this Hungarian man, and he's at least part Hungarian himself, but apparently he hasn't got the accent down because they use some AI technology that kind of, I guess, helped his voice performance or helped his accent work in the film to kind of enhance it and make it more Hungarian. Now listen, this isn't the only project to use AI. People did some sleuthing, they did some digging, and they found that other projects have also done similar things, including Emilia Perez. We will talk about it, okay? But in the case of Adrien Brody, some people saw it as a huge slap in the face because he did, you know, end up winning the Golden Globe for Best Actor in a Drama, and he's won, you know, all these other awards, and he's considered a front runner for the Oscar as well. And so people are saying, well, how is it that this guy who's relying on AI to enhance his performance can be considered the best performance of the year? Like, let's be real here. Let's really draw a line as to what we consider to be the actor's work versus the technology and kind of helping them out. So this is a very interesting discussion that's happening. Obviously, the studio and the production team are fighting back, saying, no, we didn't actually use AI for all of this. You know, this is being blown out of proportion. We actually did the work here. But we'll see if this conversation compounds into something bigger and leads to him missing out on the Oscar. From my perspective, as someone who didn't watch The Brutalist, I'm not really invested in Adrien Brody winning this award. All I know Adrien Brody for is one of the best seasons of Peaky Blinders ever, I must say. And 2, that time where he kissed Halle Berry without her permission in front of the entire world. So those are the 2 things I know this man for, other than obviously some other performances in the past. So I'm not overly committed, like I'm not overly invested in his Oscar storyline. As I said in my reaction to the Golden Globes, my personal picks for who would win in this category would either be Ralph Fiennes for Conclave 1000%, or Coleman Domingo for Sing Sing. And Coleman Domingo was identified as a front runner very early on in 2024, but unfortunately he lost just a little bit of steam and others have kind of come along and snatched that title. But I watched Sing Sing relatively recently and it was a fantastic film with a brilliant lead performance. He was basically the only like real actor in that film because the kind of other inmates are actual felons. So he's kind of leading this whole cast of people who are less experienced in acting, but it just feels so natural. It feels so grounded. He's just fantastic in this film. So really and truly, I would hand it gladly over to Coleman Domingo. Let's be so serious right now. He doesn't need to be, you know, always the bridesmaid, never the bride. Give him the Oscar if he deserves it, especially if some other people in this category are out here using AI. Let's be so serious. It should go straight to him. Okay, so next up on the list, we have Best Supporting Actress. And here the nominees are Ariana Grande for Wicked, Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez, Felicity Jones for The Brutalist, Monica Barbaro for A Complete Unknown, and Isabella Rossellini for Conclave. I think it's safe to say that this is probably going to go to Zoe Saldana for Emilia Perez, despite despite the thunderstorm, okay, despite the chaos and madness surrounding that project. We will talk about it. Ultimately, I think Zoe has emerged unscathed. All of the critiques and issues that people have expressed about that film have had little to do with her specifically, and very few people have said that like she's given a bad performance in that film. I think she was very good in Emilia Perez, and so I love to see her be handed over the gold. Again, you have that similar storyline of like she's been working for so long, she's been a part of these huge franchises and projects that are kind of like career defining but also era defining in Hollywood, but yet she's gotten very little recognition and credit for that. And so this will kind of be the icing on the cake of this whole Oscars campaign, the storyline, kind of taking that gold home ultimately. I think she has one of the strongest campaigns of all of the actresses on this list, barring only, of course, my sister, my other sister, Ariana. Listen, I personally, even though Zoe is the front runner and like is pretty much certainly gonna go to her unless something else crazy comes out about this damn film, but I personally would be gagged. Like I would actually fall on the floor once again, roll over on the floor, fall to my knees, etc. and so forth, if the Oscar ended up going to Ariana, because sis, she did that. Like I've talked about it so many times now. I mean, I have my Wicked review if you want to hear more, but she, like, all I can say is that she did that. All I can say is that she absolutely did. She put her whole she put her whole into that role. Like, how can you look me in the eye and tell me that she would not deserve an Oscar for her performance? She was note perfect as Galinda/Glinda. What faults can you find? Like literally, what can you fault in her performance? Her voice was extraordinary because she's naturally gifted and she's been working. She's been working to improve her vocal performances. But then you have the physical performance as well. She delivered on comedy. She delivered on drama. She delivered on the friendship. She delivered on anger. She delivered on the frenemy aspect. Like every single category she delivered in. She did everything, alongside, of course, her green sister, Cynthia. If those two, again, in my imaginary version of the Oscars, if those two ended up taking home gold for their performances in Wicked, I would just be so delighted. I would be thrilled and happy. But again, it's unlikely to happen because of especially the old guard, okay, on the Academy. They're never going to allow that to happen. Okay, so next up, naturally, we have Best Supporting Actor. And here the nominees are Kieran Culkin for A Real Pain, Guy Pearce for The Brutalist, Jeremy Strong for The Apprentice, Yura Barisov for Anora, and Edward Norton for A Complete Unknown. Okay, so we have the same sort of names that popped up in the Golden Globes as well, which, by the way, this whole list of nominees to me was just very uninspired, very drab, very repetitive. That tends to happen every single award season, to be honest. Like, you see the same names pop up here, there, everywhere. But here, it really just did feel like a condensed version of the Golden Globes nominees list. So, like, there are no real surprises here, and it's quite disappointing. And it speaks to how boring 2024 was as a year in film. I know some people got really triggered when I said that 2024 was a disappointing year for film in my Golden Globes video, but I still stand by that because many of you weren't even able to give me actual arguments for why it wasn't. Like, many of you were just like, she's wrong, she doesn't know anything. But like, okay, so why am I wrong? Tell me, what are the films that prove that 2024 was one of the best years for film in recent years? Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't say that there weren't any good films in 2024. I just said that in comparison to other years, 2024 was relatively weak. And the fact that 2023 had strikes for a good chunk of it kind of gave an explanation for why 2024 was weak, but people still weren't having it. They were like, la la la, 2024 was one of the best years and blah blah blah. No, it wasn't. It literally wasn't. Look at the list of nominees here. It clearly wasn't. Honestly, most of the performances in this category and even in the whole nominees list wouldn't have even made it on there in better years. But here we're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel, so like whatever. So here we have Kieran Culkin. Speaking of scraping, now listen, it sounds like I hate Kieran Culkin. I actually don't. I think he is a great actor. I just don't think he has a lot of range. His role in Succession suited him and his personality and approach really, really well, and so he was perfect as Roman. But here, from what I saw, and to be fair, I did not see the whole of A Real Pain, so take all of this with a grain of, or at least a chunk of salt. But from what I've seen, it's just more of the same. Perhaps there are more like emotional beats and drama and blah 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 that kind of, you know, make things a bit more interesting and dynamic. But from the little amount that I've seen of this film so far, it's very similar to what we've seen him do before. So as I said, I still assert that if it was a better year for film, he wouldn't have made it on here because it just wasn't anything spectacular. Now we do have Guy Pearce for The Brutalist. I can't really say too much on The Brutalist because I haven't watched the film, and I will never watch the film because it's 3.5 hours long, okay? But Guy Pearce is getting that same sort of Zoe Saldana, Demi Moore treatment, you know, an actor who's been around for a very, very long time and has gotten little recognition for his great work, and so perhaps he would emerge as a front runner in this category purely on that basis. Although the fact that Kieran won the Golden Globe tells me that maybe he might go home with the Oscar as well for his role in A Real Pain, which would honestly be shocking. I gave Robert Downey Jr. a hard time last year for Oppenheimer, but this to me would be even more shocking. I said Robert Downey Jr. didn't have any range last year. Now imagine my shock and surprise if Kieran ended up taking, like, apparently this category is just for the actors who have no range, because if you're talking about range here, if you're talking about people who are able to mix it up and disappear into a role, let's talk about Jeremy Strong, let's talk about Guy Pearce, but we're not going to be talking about RDJ or Kieran Culkin. I don't understand what is going on. In terms of who I think should win, I'm not overly invested. Like I said, I don't think it was a great category and I don't think it was a great year. I'm not overly invested in anyone here. But shout out to Yura again for Honora. Didn't really love that film as much as others did, but I do think he was a standout performance in it. And I'm really glad to see that he made it, okay, to home base with an Academy Award nomination. Okay, so next up, let's dive into some screenplays. I don't often do this. I don't often dive into the screenplay categories because I'm not a writer. I'm not a writer, and I feel like you kind of need to know what you're talking about when it comes to screenplay. But I took a look at this list and I do have some things to say, so we are going to dive into it for today's video. Starting us off with Best Adapted Screenplay, here we have A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Emilia Perez, Nickel Boys, and Sing Sing. So the only film that I haven't seen from this list is A Complete Unknown, as you probably would have guessed because I haven't really talked about that film yet. I am due to see it next week, so by the time that the Oscars roll around, I will have an idea of what that film is actually like. But until then, I can judge the rest. And the main reason why I wanted to talk about the Best Screenplay category is because of the presence of that one big elephant in the room, Emilia Perez. Let's talk about Emilia Perez and how it became the most hated film of 2024, because wow. Now I would just like to rewind back a few months, perhaps to September, October, when I saw this film in cinema, and I would just like to hold my hand up and say, I didn't hate it. Like, I actually really liked Emilia Perez. Yes, it's different. Yes, it's a little esoteric. It's a little bit kind of random at times. It's a different approach to talking about some of the subjects that they discuss in that film, like to do with a sort of trans experience, but from the perspective of a criminal, from the perspective of a terrible, terrible woman who has, murdered people, tortured people, done horrible things in Mexico, but kind of going through her transition and how she wants to be this person that she knows she truly is. And so even though you have this exterior that is very machismo, that is very violent and brutal and terrifying, she also has that inner self that wants to break free and wants to be able to live in her truth. And so she hires Zoe Saldana's character to assist her in that, in the most, again, scary, terrifying manner, kind of kidnaps Zoe Saldana and tells her to get this sorted. So yeah, you're taking on this journey of transition, of self-acceptance, but also of complete reinvention as someone who committed horrible crimes, did horrible, horrible things, and destroyed communities in their past and in their old body, is able to reform themselves and try and give back to communities, try and somehow pay reparations to all of the people that they did wrong to and whose lives were destroyed by their criminal activities and enterprises. All the while you have singing and dancing and romance and baby mama drama. Like, it's a whole situation. And honestly, my overwhelming thoughts coming out of Emilia Perez is, wow, there really is no other film like this. I can't really think of another film that is quite like this one. It's unique. Like, that's one thing you cannot take away from this film. It is quite unique, at least to my knowledge. So that was pretty much the beginning and end of my thoughts on Emilia Perez. Like, I was like, damn, that was wild and crazy, but I kind of liked it and it's very unique, so I commend Netflix for making it. Cool, okay, let's get some lunch. Like, but I should have known. I should have known that would have been the end, because here comes Twitter, here comes social media, people online, and they were trashing this film. Now, this film had a limited theatrical release, so at the beginning the trashing was quiet, and in fact most people were just kind of mixed to slightly positive on the film, and those were the people that actually went out and watched the film in theaters. But when it became available on Netflix for all to see, for the masses to consume, oh, that's when everyone got louder with their opinions on this film. And the initial criticism was its handling of trans issues, which I cannot even begin to claim to have much knowledge on. So I can't really say if this film did justice to such complex issues through its very quirky and different approach. Like, I can't really say that, but I did see the clips that people were posting, especially of Zoe Saldana talking to this doctor from Thailand, and they're actually they're singing, they're not even talking. They're singing and they're talking about the different surgeries for transitioning, and people kind of reposted that clip as sort of evidence for how terrible this film is. I would say that people posted that clip without context, which made it look worse than it actually was, within the film itself, because within the wider context you see how that tone kind of fit, and the sort of irreverence and surrealist tone of the musical sequence makes sense within the context of the film. But of course, people weren't gonna stop and think about that. Like, that would take nuance, which no one has. Literally no one has nuance, so they just reposted the clip being like, look how terrible this film is. Okay, fine. Then we got on to the second stage of the Emilia Perez hatred, and that was to do with Miss Selena Gomez. That was to do with Miss Selena Gomez. And honestly, this is the part that I can get on board with. This is the part of the hating that I can definitely get on board with, because really and truly, she was the worst part of the film. Like I said before in my Golden Globes video, she's one of those actresses that I don't understand. Like, it doesn't click for me why she is so highly regarded and almost revered as an actress. I've said this for years. I do not think she is a spectacular actress. Oh, sorry, I just don't. Listen, I liked Wizards of Waverly Place back in the day as much as any old person, as much as any old tween did back in 2010, okay? I'm not taking that away from her whatsoever. But I have also since seen seasons of Only Murders in the Building, and I have seen her be nominated for Golden Globes and Emmys for her performance in that show, and I've been left baffled. I've been left confused and confuddled because I am not seeing the brilliance that others have been seeing. But fine, you know, if Martin Short and Steve Martin are also going to be nominated, then she might as well tag along in there, whatever. But where I absolutely draw the line was the awards campaign for Selena Gomez for Emilia Perez. This is where it just, you've absolutely lost me. And honestly, the only explanation that I can come up for this is that she is a producer on the film, and perhaps it was a requirement that if the film was going to go for an Oscars campaign or awards campaign, that she would also be put forward for her performance in the film. Like that's the only way that I can kind of navigate this maze of misunderstanding, because otherwise it literally doesn't make sense. On the basis of her performance alone, all of this awards talk literally makes no sense. And her absence in this list, okay, for the Academy, shows that the Academy clocked. The Academy clocked and said, absolutely not, Selena. You stand back over there, because based off of her performance, she does not belong here. It wasn't just the fact that Selena's not the strongest actor that made people annoyed by her performance in the film. It was also the fact that she's not a great Spanish speaker. Again, people took this out of context, because in the film itself, it's very clear that she's not native to Mexico. She's actually American. And she says many times that she wants to go home to Florida, where her sister lives. And so it makes sense, you know, within the context of the film, that she is not a fluent Spanish speaker. But people were annoyed that she was present in the film at all as someone who doesn't speak Spanish fluently, especially because, you know, in the past she has benefited from a Latin American audience. She's released Latin American songs and albums, and so people are like, really? Like, you've made so much money out of the Latin American market, but you haven't bothered to up your Spanish game? Like, that's kind of an insult. Like, that's the approach that people had also when it came to Selena Gomez's performance in the film, to which I would say, listen, this is not my bag, this is not my business, but get her again. Get her again. Like, it is kind of inexcusable. Speaking of inexcusable, remember what I said about Adrian Brody and the AI situation? Yeah, Emilia Perez is in a similar boat, apparently, because they also used similar technology for that film, and people were speculating that it was to assist Selena Gomez with her Spanish speaking, although considering the end result, perhaps the AI didn't pull up as much as it needed to. And then on top of all of that, as if this isn't juicy enough, you have the fact that Emilia Perez is directed by a French director. Emilia Perez is a French film, which pissed people off for many reasons, but they just felt like, you know, the fact that it was made by a French director explains the mishandling of the trans issues, but also the misrepresentation of Mexico. So this Frenchman has compounded all of these issues, and it certainly doesn't help that this film has not only been nominated for Best Picture, but also Best International Film coming out of France. So yeah, people are pissed, people are angry, people are dismayed by Emilia Perez, and that's how it became the most hated film of 2024. So taking us back to the screenplay category, all of this was to say, I think it is ludicrous that it's been nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay. That actually makes no sense whatsoever. I'm actually less annoyed that it was nominated for Best Picture than the screenplay, because if anything. You know, the screenplay was the weakest part of this film, aside from Selena Gomez's acting. I think the other performances were solid. I think Sophia and Zoe gave excellent performances in the film, so they are deserving of, you know, being on this list. But the screenplay, especially in the second half where it was proper wonky, yeah, that just makes absolutely no sense. I don't know what the Academy was thinking. But now that I've released all of those negative vibes from Emilia Perez, I will say the rest of this category looks pretty solid. Again, I haven't seen A Complete Unknown, but by all accounts, it's a fantastic film. So shout out to Jay Cox and James Mangold. But I am especially incredibly happy to see Conclave, Nickel Boys and Sing Sing feature on this list. 3 very, very strong contenders for Best Adapted Screenplay. There, in these cases, I can say, yep, screenplay was exceptional for these films, especially Conclave. Ooh, Conclave with that twist. Ooh. Excellent writing. Now, in terms of who I think will win, literally anyone other than Emilia Perez. Then we turn on to Best Original Screenplay, where here the nominees are Anora, The Brutalist, A Real Pain, September 5th, and The Substance. So in terms of my personal pick for who I would love to see win in this category, The Substance. Yeah. I would absolutely pick The Substance. What a brilliant original idea. Although I did say in my recent Best of 2024 video that The Substance bared striking resemblance to another 2024 film by the name of A Different Man, which starred none other than Sebastian Stan. It is kind of interesting that The Substance has been nominated for Best Original Screenplay when there is another film that is somewhat similar that is also quite excellent. But out of this list, I would absolutely pick The Substance, mostly out of process of elimination, to be honest, because I haven't seen the rest other than Anora, which, as I mentioned, I wasn't the biggest fan of. So yeah, The Substance would win. Okay, so the next category up is Best Director, and here the nominees are Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez, that's the Frenchman, Sean Baker for Anora, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, Coralie Fargiat for The Substance, and James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. There are a lot of French sounding names in this category, but none of them are the French name that I wanted to see. Where's Denis Villeneuve? It still annoys me to no end that Dune Part 2 hasn't gotten any of the credit and acknowledgement that it absolutely deserves, being one of the best films of 2024. Like, it pisses me off. It literally pisses me off. And Denis Villeneuve absolutely deserved to be nominated for Best Director. I mean, just take a look at this list. You want to look me dead in the eyes, dead in my 4 eyes, and tell me that Anora holds a candle to Dune? Really? Like, that's how you know this is all political and it's all been predetermined by the press, by the studios, etc. and so forth, because just off of the basis of pure talent and expertise and the end products, we know what would come out on top here. Like, those of us would know what would come out on top, and it wouldn't be Anora. It wouldn't even be The Substance, as much as I, not enjoyed, but experienced that film. It wouldn't be The Substance. But Dune being locked out of some of these major categories during this year's awards season is purely political. It's not off of the basis of merit here, but it's just because Warner Brothers has absolutely floundered its awards campaign, which is painful to see because it clearly comes out on top out of the entirety of 2024's movie roster. Now, in terms of who I think will win in this category, it'll probably go to Brady Corbet for The Brutalist. Again, haven't seen that film, but it seems to be a front runner for Best Picture, which we'll talk about in a second. So it would make sense if he won Best Director. Who even cares? Denis is not on that list, so he's not even going up against hard competition. No offense to the other nominees. Listen, we need to move on. Now it's time to get into the big one. Yes, we do have Best Picture, where the nominees are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. Even John M. Chu could have been nominated. So back to directors, even John M. Chu could have been nominated for Wicked. Like, I would have preferred to see him over most of the people on the list for director. Like, it's just, the list for director is just so underwhelming. And there's this like punishment for the directors who directed like big productions, you know, the directors who actually put their foot into some major productions like Dune Part 2 and Wicked and even Gladiator. I mean, not Gladiator 2 specifically, but you know what I mean? Like the big productions, like none of them have really been rewarded for their work on such films, which is interesting. They have instead favored the same old awards baity films that we have seen in recent decades. And, you know, that's fine. But last year was a really big year for major productions kind of peeking through the landscape of mediocrity. And so it's a shame to see that none of these major productions were really rewarded in the same way. But we do have a little bit of representation of such productions in the Best Picture category, with Wicked and Dune Part 2 getting shouts here. I would love to see either of those two win, but I know it's probably going to go to frontrunner The Brutalist if the AI controversy hasn't done too much damage, because, you know, it did win the Golden Globe. It has won a slew of other awards, so it's looking to be the frontrunner for this year, which is a shame because, like, no one's watched it. No one's watched it, which means no one will be invested in its awards campaign and storyline, which means no one's gonna watch this Oscars. Like, literally no one's gonna watch this year's Oscars if The Brutalist continues to be the front runner for Best Picture. People will tune out the second that the live performances are done because, like, who cares if The Brutalist wins? Literally no one has seen it because it's 3.5 hours long and apparently it was made using AI, so like no one cares. Now, there are a few films that I would rather see on this list instead of The Brutalist and Nora and I'm Still Here, although I'll hold out hope on I'm Still Here because I haven't seen it yet, but like I'm not invested at this point. And one of those films includes, yes, the monkey movie. The monkey movie, Better Man. I would have loved if Better Man got some more representation from the Academy in the nominees list because it is truly phenomenal. And most people that actually bothered to see it have come out of the cinema just like blown away by how great that monkey movie ended up being. So this is just going to turn into yet another plea for any of you guys who haven't seen Better Man. If you still can, if it's still showing in cinemas near you, go watch the Robbie Williams monkey movie because I guarantee you will be shook by how excellent it ended up being. And I would happily replace half of the films in this list with Better Man because it was truly one of the best films that came out in 2024. And if you want to hear more, by the way, about what I really enjoyed from 2024, you can check out my Best of 2024 video, which is now live on my channel. Okay, so the final category we'll be discussing for today's video is Best Motion Picture Animated. And here the nominees are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. Oh, that reminds me, The Wild Robot should also be under Best Picture. Yeah. The Wild Robot should also be nominated for Best Picture, absolutely. If Emilia Perez can be nominated for Best International Feature, coming out of France, by the way, and Best Picture, then I think The Wild Robot, which is a vastly, insanely superior film, can absolutely be nominated for, you know, Best Animated Film and Best Picture overall. It should have been, it absolutely could have been, but they didn't because they hate animated films, whatever. Anyways, very happy to see The Wild Robot on this list. It would be my pick for Best Animated Feature, hands down, no questions asked. But I do hear the Flow girlies, you know, the Flow girlies showed up in my comment section under my Golden Globes video, and you guys did say that Flow is an incredible incredible film, you know, coming out of somewhere in Eastern Europe, I think maybe Hungary or something, and it's a miracle that's even being considered because it's made by a tiny little studio. So like, I hear that, and I do want to watch the film. I've actually watched like the first 10 minutes of that film. I kind of got bored, not gonna lie. I kind of got bored, but I need to lock in and focus and commit to watching the whole thing. So jury's still out on my thoughts on Flow. So far the animation looks interesting. It's very different, although eerily similar to The Wild Robot in some ways, especially because they both tackle a very kind of interesting, not tropical, but like different kind of foresty environment. So they do have some overlap when it comes to like just the visuals of the animation, but storyline wise, The Wild Robot takes the cake. And the only reason why I can think that people think that Flow can even hold a candle to The Wild Robot is because of some people's obsessions with cats. Like some people's worship of cats is clouding their judgment, making them think that Flow can hold a candle to one of the greatest animated films made in the 21st century. Having said all that though, I do acknowledge that since Flow did win the Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature, it is probably the front runner for the Oscar as well. Again, pisses me off to no end. Just because you like cats, really? I'll finish the film, I'll watch it properly, but I still stand by my assertion that The Wild Robot comes out on top, just based off of merit alone, just not like Oscar campaign storyline. Merit alone, the film alone, The Wild Robot is superior. Like it, whatever. Whatever. So that's it from me, guys. Now that I told you guys my thoughts and feelings and reaction to the 2025 Oscar nominees, it's time for you guys to share your thoughts down in the comments below. Please be sure to subscribe to catch you videos coming up, including my reaction to the Oscars themselves when they pop up in early March. So be sure to look out for that. But in the meantime, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.